Hey, Steve Mignoni here doing the Junkyard Crawl at Berniston Auto Wrecking in Bernardstown, Massachusetts with a 1970 Chevy C30 cab and chassis. Now you might wonder, what the heck is that? You know, there's C10 half tonner, C20 3/4 tonner, C30 is the 1 ton with the big hubs and wheels. We'll get to that. But what is a cab and chassis? Well, that was a vehicle you could actually buy from Chevrolet, which consisted of a cab and a chassis. You put your own bed on it, whether it was a little dump truck or maybe a tow truck bed or a stake bed, whatever you want. But you could buy a truck from Chevrolet then as now with the chassis and the cab and no bed, because you wanted to upfit it with whatever you wanted to put on it. So that's what we have here. Now on this one here, it's a little bit confusing. We see some Chevy, we see some GMC, some mix and match parts and pieces. In particular on the front, it has a GMC hood, GMC, a Chevrolet grille, and no, it's not a factory blooper. And this with the blackout stuff, this is a 69 Chevrolet grille. And again, you know, in the junkyard or in life, these trucks quite often get punched in the nose and then patched back together, put back into use. So we'll find out in a minute what year it is. I'm pretty darn sure it's a 70 though. With that said, let's take a peek under the hood and see what we have. You gotta keep in mind, the C30, even though it's a 1-tonner, could be had with a 6-cylinder or a V8. And let's find out what we have. Oh, nice. Okay, it's a V8. It's a 2-barrel. It's possible it's a 350 2-barrel. Okay, the TAR suffix code right there. This is a 307 2-barrel. In other words, that's why it's still here. The 307 is not a bad engine, but again, it lacks cubic inches, and it's not a 302 plus 5 cubes, by the way. The 302 is a short stroke, big bore, high RPM thing. The 307 is a long stroke, small bore torque maker for station wagons and trucks like this. So that's a 307 2-barrel. We'll leave it right here. But getting back to this truck's 1-ton status, we can see right here the hubs on this are heavy duty all the way. Now remember, you couldn't get disc brakes on a Chevy truck until 1971. So this is the massive, I think 11, maybe even a 12-inch drum, wide 3 inches. But if you notice, this is the heavy duty drum also used on the 3/4 ton 20 series trucks. And this is basically an adapter that rivets to that drum and that hub, that then allows the use of probably a 17-inch Bud wheel that would be in place right here, the sort of the slotted stamp steel wheel, heavy duty stuff. But again, using the same drum with an adapter to utilize that wheel and the dual rear wheels on the axle. And we'll get to that in a second. But we make our way around here and we can see this one's pretty austere. It does have power brakes and power steering, things you probably want in a truck this big. And actually, I'm pretty sure that a 1-tonner would have to have power brakes. Not certain, but pretty sure. And being a 1-tonner with a GVW over 10,000 pounds, there's something unique about the cab. Now the cab itself will fit most any Chevy pickup. It's the same basic stuff, but the cab roof stamping, the part that goes from here to here, notice how it has raised circular pads for factory roof lights. These are factory installed, and these pads do not appear on 1/2-ton and 3/4-ton Chevy trucks. This is specific to 30 and up series cabs. So again, with a 10,000-pound GVW, I'm pretty sure it's the DOT that would demand mandatory roof lights. So Chevy knew, hey, on the 30 series and up, make these pads standard. That way we can put our own lights on them, and it's a uniform look, and it's legal. So kind of weird. These cabs, if you see one of these on a 1/2-ton pickup, you can say, you grabbed that from a bigger truck, didn't you? And you know, because of this. Now inside, we can see this one does have the West Coast mirrors. And the point of sticking the mirror out far is because with a wider bed on this thing to see beyond the back, you would need to have the mirrors stick out further. We'll switch spots here. Super Shane Richardson, the cameraman extraordinaire. I'll open the door for you and we'll have a look inside. And yeah, you know, pretty basic stuff. The 4-speed manual poking out of the floor right there, an aftermarket cassette radio. And I do see a Chevrolet logo in the center of the horn, I think. So the GMC is almost certainly ruled out. This is probably a Chevrolet C30 1-tonner. That's the in-cab gas tank right there, seen for the last time in 1972. For 1973, Chevrolet and GMC would finally put it outside, on the outside of the frame, where it's no longer in the cab, to potentially oh, allow a weenie roast in the event of a flip over, just saying. But as safety made its way closer and closer to mainstream. This, of course, are the remains of a tilt bed. Look at this, the hydraulic piston here that would have raised and lowered this wooden structure right here. And if you look here, we'll see, Shane, real quick, the way the hydraulic pump works, that drive shaft, we've seen this before, but it's classic. This drive shaft here comes off the power takeoff on the transmission. That is spun by the transmission, turning the pump here, which creates pressure in the hydraulic fluid, which then when you hit the valve allows this to pressurize and lift and tilt the bed. Kind of weird, this is a wood bed. Look what happens to wood over time. It's almost like the Monitor and the Merrimack at the bottom of the ocean, all just rotting away, turning to nothing. Right here, an old, some kind of maybe a battery box or something welded on. Not factory stuff right here for sure, all this booger welded angle iron stuff, but pretty rugged. But getting to the meat and potatoes of this thing, the 1-ton C30 could be had with a single wheel axle or this, the optional dually right here. This is how this thing has a 10,000 pound empty GVW. And these are huge wheels. What are these, 16s, I think they are? Pretty big wheels right here. Yeah, 16s. And again, this is not a split rim on this one. If it is, yeah, split rims in the back. And again, they were outlawed about 74 or so. No more split rims. With that said, this is a heavy-duty rear axle. And if we look at it, this is Chevy's heavy-duty axle, I think arrived in 1955 or 6. Massive ring gear, probably about a 12-inch ring gear, but it has a removable stamped heavy-duty steel inspection cover, but also the front unloads, kind of a hollow banjo, if you will, but a heavy-duty piece right here. And the interesting thing about this, to keep the track as narrow as possible, unlike 5-ton dual axles, which have an adapter between the inner and outer wheel, these have the same stud pinches the inner and outer wheel. There is no adapter between the inner and outer wheels. In other words, they're very close together. The point of that being to keep the track as narrow as possible. Again, it's a small-ish 1-ton truck, but again, these studs pinch the inner and outer wheels together, whereas a lot of heavier trucks, 2 sets of studs do the clamping of the dual wheels on the back. Let's make our way around here. I like all the home-brewed booger welded stuff. Hey, if it works, it works. But here's a ball hitch with just homemade angle iron plate steel stuff, flame cut, very can-do, very New England. The pivots right here, I think for the dump body right there, that pin, very basic, but hey, if it works, it works. The only downside, of course, wood eventually does, nature wins in the end. But let's come down here, and this right here is kind of the controversial. Here's the fuel filler neck, where it would go right here in the cab. Here's the end of the gas tank right here, and this would live behind the seat, obviously. But that's a bunch of gasoline to have in the cab riding along with you, just saying. Now the VIN, take a peek down there, Super Shane, on the bottom. The very bottom row of characters, we see CE330. C is Chevrolet, E is V8, 3 is 1-ton, 3 is chassis cab, and O is 1970 model year. So yes, it's a 1970. Now, the only crazy part is I've done some research, and GMC and Chevrolet VINs by this point in time, I'm pretty sure, I don't think there's a way to tell a GMC from a Chevy truck. If you know better than I do, let me know in the comments. But with that said, from all appearances, it's a Chevrolet 1-ton dual axle cab and chassis. Speaking of cab and chassis, this is the 1969 Chevy recreational and camper vehicle brochure. And we can see right here, Chevrolet sold these trucks and vehicles, and camping in RV was a major thing in the 50s and 60s. People loved to hit the road and just take the family out for a vacation in the wilderness. But here's the chassis cabs, big on room and handling ease. And again, it says a camper mounted on a Chevy chassis cab has a lot going for it, or a stake bed, or a tow body, or a dump body, or whatever it might be. But it says your heavy-duty suspensions, including rear wheels, are possible. So again, this is a 1-ton, heavy-duty, 1-ton, about as big and burly as it got, until you get into the bigger 40, 50, 60, 70 series trucks with diesels and that kind of thing. But pretty cool piece, and here it is languishing in the boneyard. If this thing could only talk, but it is kind of odd that this had a wooden tilt bed on it, which certainly would not have been a commercial thing. Undoubtedly, somebody put this together on a budget saying, hey, you know what, wood's good, let's do it. But over time, we can see, of course, it didn't last too well. An aftermarket welded bed would probably still be here, but hey, so be it. Well, that's the story of the 1-ton cab and chassis, and they still make them, pickup truck from Chevrolet. If you like this video, be sure to share it with your friends. Give us a thumbs up. Yes, I can speak. And by all means, hit the bell so you know when the next video hits you just tomorrow morning.